Hi, Math 206. This is Dr. McGathy, and we are starting Chapter 8, which is focused on solving equations. So on this first section, we'll be solving equations using the addition and subtraction properties of equality. So in order to solve equations, we need to know what a solution to an equation is. So let's determine if y equals 3/4 is a solution to this equation, 4y plus 3 equals 8y. In order for this to be a solution, if you replace y in the equation with the number 3/4, you should end up with a true statement. So let's go ahead and do that and see if it computes to a true statement. 4, where there's a y, I'll replace it with the number 3/4 plus 3 equals 8 times y, which is 3/4. All right, so now I'm going to compute the left-hand side and see if it's equal to the right-hand side. On the left here, we've got multiplication and addition. So using order of operations, we do multiplication first. So this is 4 times 3/4. 4 is the same as 4 over 1. And that's how I like to think about things when I am multiplying with fractions. And notice here, I've got a factor of 4 in the numerator and a factor of 4 in the denominator. So you can divide 4 from the numerator, divide the denominator by 4, and you're left with 3 in the numerator, 1 in the denominator. So that is 3. 3 over 1 is just 3, plus 3. That's on the left-hand side. And over here on the right, again, this is multiplication. So 8 times the fraction 3/4, I want to think of 8 as a fraction, 8 over 1. Notice here that 8 and 4 have a common factor of 4, so I could divide 8 divided by 4, which leaves me with 2, and 4 divided by 4, that leaves me with 1. So what I have left here, 2 times 3 is 6 in the numerator, and then 1 times 1, 1 in the denominator. You didn't have to write that 1. Either way, 3 plus 3 now is 6, and on the right-hand side I have 6. So this is a true statement. So my answer here is yes. Y equals 3/4 is a solution to that equation. All right, so now we know how to recognize a solution when someone presents us with a solution, but how do we solve equations? How do we come up with our own solutions? And we've seen this in the past. We use the addition or subtraction property of equality. That states that if you have numbers A, B, and C, if A is equal to B, then we know that also adding the same amount to both sides of the equation makes a true statement. And also subtracting the same amount from both sides, A minus C equals B minus C. So if you know A equals B, then you can add C to both sides and it's still a true equation. You can also subtract C from both sides and you still have a true equation. So let's, the reason that we use this property is when you start with an equation where you don't know what the solution is, you can manipulate that equation by adding or subtracting the same amount from both sides. And what you should end up with is the variable all by itself on one side of the equation and the solution on the other. Let's see how that works. Let's solve these equations. Let's solve x plus 11 equals -3. So in order to isolate the variable x by itself on the left-hand side, I want to get rid of this plus 11. So to undo addition, we'll apply subtraction. So I'll subtract the same amount from both sides of this equation. So x plus 11 minus 11 leaves me with just x. And -3 minus 11, remember that these have the same sign. They're both negatives. They're both going in the same direction. So we add together the absolute values. 3 plus 11 is 14. So 3 negatives and 11 more negatives makes 14 negatives. So x equals -14. Now we can always check this solution too after you're done solving by plugging this into the equation. -14 plus 11, is that equal to -3? That's the question. -14 plus 11 is indeed -3. it checks out. It's great. Let's do another one. n minus 4 equals negative 5. I need to undo the subtraction by adding 4 to both sides. And remember that when you solve these equations, what I want you to do is think of that equal sign as splitting your problem into two sides. And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So n minus 4 plus 4 is just n. Negative 5 plus 4 positives is negative 1. 1 negative. And there's my solution. And then we can always check by plugging this in. M is negative 1 minus 4. Does that equal negative 5? Yes, negative 5 equals negative 5. Great. All right, let's do a few more. N minus 3/8 equals 1/2. So the operation here is subtraction. I want to get n by itself, so I will add 3/8 to both sides. So plus 3/8 plus 3/8. Again, thinking of this equal sign as separating me into two sides of the equation. And minus 3/8 plus 3/8 gives me just n, and 1/2 plus 3/8. Now we have to remember how to add fractions together. Let me write this on the side here. 1/2 plus 3/8. To add two fractions together, you need a common denominator. So both 2 and 8 go into the number 8. So let me multiply both the top and bottom here by 4. This will give me 4/8 plus 3/8, which is 7/8. All right, so now I have my solution. Again, when you have the variable by itself and a number on the other side, that number is your solution. And we can check by plugging 7/8 into that equation. So n is 7/8 minus 3/8. And we want to see if that's equal to 1/2. So 7/8, they have the same denominator, so you can go ahead and subtract those numerators. 7 minus 3 is 4. 4/8. Is that equal to 1/2? Yes, 4/8 is the same as 1/2. All right, let's do one more. This one has decimals. A minus 3.7 equals 4.3. So even though we're dealing with decimals, it's the same procedure. To get a by itself, we want to undo this operation. This is subtraction, so I'll perform addition. Plus 3.7 to both sides of this equation. What's left here is just a, and on the right hand side, let's add these two decimals together. 7 plus 3 is 10. Line up that decimal point. 4 plus 3 is 7, plus 1 is 8. So a equals 8. And then we can always check our solution by doing 8 minus 3.7, plugging our solution into the equation, and check to see if that's equal to 4.3. And yes, if we do 8.0 minus 3.7, we do end up with 4.3. Great.